Imagine a day when you can say no to someone without any anxiety, no longer fearing judgmental looks or the feeling of being abandoned. This is the deepest result of the healing journey an empath can experience. A journey that begins with exhaustion, worry, and inner turmoil, passes through layers of pain and sacrifice, and finally allows you to calmly set boundaries for yourself without feeling guilty. If you are someone who always listens, yields, and is easily moved by others' pain, you may see yourself in the image of an empath. Society often assumes that when an empath overcomes their wounds, they become softer, gentler, more loving, and open their hearts unconditionally to everyone. But Carl Jung, a great psychologist, saw a different, more complex and sometimes uncomfortable truth. The true transformation of an empath after healing does not make them someone easily manipulated, but rather an independent individual who knows how to set boundaries and stands firm amid the storms. This video will help you explore that journey through Jung's lens, to understand who a truly healed empath becomes and why that can be the turning point for your freedom and inner peace. Stay with the journey to the end to find your own light, solutions, and true peace from within. 1. The price of unhealed empathy. If you are reading these lines, you are likely the person others turn to when they are tired, confused, or broken. You are a great listener. You can sense the sadness in a voice, the tension in silence, and the unspoken things between words. But here's a truth few ask: who listens to you? At first, empathy feels like a gift. You believe you were born to understand others, to soothe, to keep everything from falling apart. You learn to yield at a young age. Learn to say, "It's okay," even when your heart is breaking inside. And then, at some point, your boundaries began to dissolve. You want to say no, but the words get stuck in your throat. You're afraid of being abandoned, afraid of being seen as selfish, afraid that if you're not there, not helping, not enduring, love, recognition, or the feeling of being needed will disappear. So, you nod again. You listen again. You shoulder yet another burden of emotions that aren't yours. And the price starts to show. You absorb others' sadness like a sponge, their anger, their pressure, their insecurity. You bring it all home. At night, you lie there, your body exhausted, but your mind refusing to rest. You don't sleep deeply. Joy comes and goes quickly, as if you don't allow yourself to stay with it for long. Somewhere inside, you always feel you are not allowed to feel light when others are still in pain. Ironically, you know very well how others feel. But when someone asks, "What about you?" you get confused. You fall silent. You have no words for yourself. Empathy that has long been directed outward makes you lose connection with your inner world. You read others' emotions, but are blind to your own sadness, anger, or longing. Then comes a loneliness that's hard to name. You're always there, always the steady one in the family, the healer in relationships, the emotional anchor when things get chaotic. But when you falter, when you need to be held, the space around you feels strangely empty. Not because there's no one there, but because there's no one who truly sees you. You're present in others' lives, but you yourself have nowhere to lean on. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." In Jung's terms, this price is tied to what he calls the shadow. The shadow is not evil. It is the collection of parts within you that were deemed unacceptable. Anger, the need to be prioritized, the desire to say enough, decisiveness, even healthy selfishness. As a child, you may have learned that these things would get you ostracized. So, You buried them. You chose to be the pleasant one, the understanding one, the one who doesn't cause trouble. But what is buried does not disappear. It just quietly works from behind the scenes. Think of the woman who always takes on responsibility for her family. She does everything for everyone, thinks and worries on their behalf. She believes that if she doesn't keep things together, everything will collapse. But deep inside, a part of her is angry because no one asks if she's tired. Another part longs to leave, to live for herself. These parts are pushed into the shadow, and the price is exhaustion, bitterness, and sometimes explosive outbursts in unexpected moments. Or the woman who stays in a toxic relationship. She understands her partner's pain. She makes excuses for the hurtful behavior. She believes that if she loves enough, is patient enough, things will change. But her shadow holds suppressed anger, the feeling of betraying herself. The more she denies it, the more trapped she becomes. Unhealed empathy not only makes you tired, it makes you deny yourself. You trade away your true feelings and deep needs just to keep everything around you calm, to keep others satisfied. You strive to be the good person so much that you lose your true essence. Perhaps the question is no longer, why am I like this? But rather, what parts of myself have I had to give up just to be accepted, to be loved? The healing process doesn't begin when you become gentler. You've always been gentle enough. It truly begins when you're brave enough to look straight at your shadow without turning away. When you allow yourself to admit, I'm angry, I'm tired, I don't want to carry more. In truth, that's not selfishness, but honesty with yourself. If you see yourself in these lines, know that there is nothing wrong with you. You've simply lived too long in the role of the ever-empathic one, to the point of forgetting that you also have feelings and boundaries that need to be respected. Realizing this is not for you to blame yourself, but to start asking a new question. What would happen if I allowed myself to stay with my own emotions, just as I always stay with the emotions of others? 2. The turning point. Crisis and facing the shadow. Some wounds leave no scars on the skin, yet bleed silently within the soul for years. The most painful thing isn't the blow from a stranger, but the moment you realize the one you loved, the one you protected with all your heart, is the very person who lets go or even hurts you the most. This truth often comes unexpectedly, like a cold gust of wind on an otherwise peaceful day. Your heart shatters not just because of betrayal, but also the realization that you lost yourself long ago just to preserve a relationship, a faint hope that love and kindness would eventually be reciprocated. Behind all the endurance and forgiveness lies an ocean of layered emotions. Shock, pain, confusion, mixed with self-anger for not recognizing your limits. Even after all the effort to endure, forgive, and forget yourself for others, what remains is just emptiness. Sometimes, you even wonder if you're really living your own life or merely existing as a mirror reflecting others' needs and pains. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." A crisis does not come just to remind you of pain, but as a call from the depths of your soul. It's time to face your own shadow. According to Jung, the shadow is not just the ugly part, but also a collection of the parts you've rejected. Ferocity, anger, the wish to protect yourself, the ability to say enough things you've buried because you fear judgment, losing love, or acceptance. The shadow is not your enemy, but a silent voice reminding you. It's time to return honesty to your feelings. This reminds me of someone named Tiffany, who currently works at a small clinic on the outskirts of Atlanta. Tiffany is the epitome of family devotion, always giving her all for her husband and children, always stepping back to keep the peace. Every time there was a conflict, she was the one who yielded. When someone was sad, she would soothe every emotion, even at the expense of her own fatigue. But then, the very husband she put all her trust in, the one who was her whole world, chose to leave at the moment she was most vulnerable. That betrayal completely broke Tiffany. In her confusion, she realized she wasn't just hurt by others, but also by herself. All those times she stayed silent, endured, denied her true feelings just to preserve a perfect image. The tears she shed were not only for others but for herself, for the part that had been neglected for so long, worn out after countless silent sacrifices. That was also when Tiffany faced her own shadow. At first, there was fear. Fear of the intensity of her feelings, fear that she'd become cold, selfish if she dared say no, if she dared set boundaries. But gradually, she discovered in her anger and sadness a new energy, the energy of autonomy, the ability to choose, and a determined will to protect herself. Tiffany began to acknowledge her true feelings, listened to even the inner voice that objected, and slowly realized forgiveness does not mean enduring unconditionally, and love does not mean becoming someone else's shadow. Sometimes, choosing to be cold, to leave, or decisively set boundaries is the only way to preserve dignity, the survival of her soul. That turning point, though painful, became the foundation for profound transformation. When the shadow is acknowledged, you are no longer the passive, reactive empath, carrying others' emotions and abandoning yourself. You gradually step into the stage of active sensitivity, meaning you can listen, but also say no, understand, but have the strength to refuse if it means harming yourself. This is the subtle shift from living for outside acceptance to living true to your inner values. Ultimately, every crisis holds a gentle yet powerful message. You were not born just to endure. To be loved is your right, but self-love is a choice that no one can take from you. The healing journey, as Jung taught, begins the moment you dare look into your darkness, dare forgive yourself for having been lost, and then step by step, walk out into the light with your own truth. So, if today you feel both weak and strong, both hurt and angry, both wanting to hold on and let go, know that this is a signal of a major turning point. It's an invitation for you to join the individuation process, from passive sensitivity to bold autonomy, from existing in fear to living fully in your own values. A new life will begin the moment you dare touch that darkness and believe you deserve more fulfillment than ever before. 3. Stage 1. Ceasing to absorb others' emotions. The individuation journey that Carl Jung emphasized is not a straight path or a miracle that happens overnight after a bout of pain. It is a step-by-step process, each experience marking the return to yourself after years of losing your way in others' sadness, anger, and expectations. Jung described this transformation as consisting of 3 main stages, and the very first stage, which seems the simplest, is actually one of the greatest challenges for those with empathetic hearts. Ceasing to absorb others' emotions. This is the first step, where you begin to realize that not every emotion you feel comes from within. Many of them, in fact, are others' pain, pressure, and insecurity, and you, like a mirror or a sponge, are merely receiving and reflecting them. Carl Jung called this step conscious differentiation. It is the ability to distinguish between the self and the not-self. While the theory may sound simple, for an empath, this is like learning to breathe all over again. For so many years, you've become used to absorbing others' emotions as naturally as breathing. Just stepping into a tense room, your mood grows heavy, even if you were fine moments ago. If someone gets angry, anxiety wells up in you, seemingly out of nowhere. How many times have you wondered, why am I so sad? Why is my heart racing? My stomach tied in knots, even when nothing has actually happened to me? That's when the boundary between your emotions and others is nearly non-existent. It's as if you have no skin to shield your heart from the storms of the world around you. You keep carrying these burdens, with the silent belief that if you endure enough, share enough, and are kind enough, everything will be okay. But the truth is, no one becomes stronger by carrying the emotions of the whole world on their shoulders. You only become drained, exhausted, and ultimately lose touch with yourself. Healing begins at the moment you dare to stop, dare to ask yourself, is this really my emotion? This little question is a big test for anyone used to living by others' feelings. Whenever you feel heavy-hearted, try to pause, place your hand on your chest, breathe deeply, then ask again, this sadness, this anger, this pressure, where does it really come from? From something in my own past? Or did it just arise after a conversation, a message, or entering a strange space? This is the practice of conscious differentiation. Every time emotions surge, check their source. Doing this doesn't make you cold. On the contrary, it teaches you how to be both empathetic and protect yourself from being swept away by the world's emotional tides. With enough practice, you will discover something almost miraculous. You no longer feel responsible for others' happiness, sadness, or insecurity. You're no longer manipulated by guilt when you dare say no or set clear boundaries for yourself. This freedom, though small, is the very first building block for the resilient inner life you've been searching for. You might notice the first changes in very small things. An afternoon when you enter your workplace feeling at ease, and even when someone is grumpy, you maintain your calm instead of immediately feeling anxious. Or the first time you realize you have the right to refuse to listen to someone's problems on a tired day without guilt, without feeling like a bad person. Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." You don't have to bear the world's pain to be worthy of love. You're not obligated to be the peacemaker all the time. Your sensitivity is a gift, but it also needs to be protected by you. You may feel unsettled as you begin to ask, is this really mine? There may be disappointed people who reproach or try to pull you back into your old role, but you've reached this point. You deserve to live true to your feelings, to choose not to absorb what doesn't belong to you anymore. The first stage of individuation, therefore, is not about becoming selfish. It is about learning to take responsibility for yourself and letting others be responsible for their own feelings. This is the true beginning of the healing journey, not separating from the world, but returning to yourself, steadier and lighter with each passing day. 4. Stage 2. Selective relationships. The journey of healing is not only a conversation with oneself, but also a silent renewal among relationships once thought to be the closest. After learning to recognize and hold on to your own emotions, empaths step into the next phase, selectively re-evaluating their circle. Jung once emphasized, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But not every change makes you grow. Sometimes what you need is the courage to let go, to embark on a new journey of maturity." Many people confuse nice with kind. Being nice means you please others, are agreeable, always try to satisfy people, sometimes at the cost of sacrificing yourself just to keep things peaceful. Being kind, on the other hand, is true compassion. Knowing how to listen and set boundaries. Knowing how to say no to what is undeserving. If nice is like water, always taking the shape of its container, then kind is like a stream with defined banks, knowing where to flow, where to stop, and where to merge just right. The journey of selecting relationships is the time you transition from nice to kind. Here, setting boundaries is not to build barriers or evade people and feelings. On the contrary, boundaries are mental fences that help you decide where to open the door to let others in and where to close it to preserve your peace. You no longer agree unconditionally to every invitation, no longer shoulder others' pain simply out of fear of displeasing them. You begin to ask, does this relationship really nurture me? Does this person truly respect my values and boundaries? These questions, though gentle, have the power to transform your entire relationship map. Not everyone is happy when you begin to change. Old relationships, especially those used to your always agreeable, easygoing version, may react strongly. Rejection or silence, criticism, even slander, such as, "She's changed, she's become selfish," or "She used to be so nice, now she's cold," can leave you confused and at times wanting to return to the old comfort zone. Some may choose to leave, or even try to isolate or deny you. This hurts not because you hate them, but because you grieve the memories, grieve your former self. But remember, not every connection deserves to be kept forever, especially when it drains your energy and makes you continually doubt or abandon yourself. Carl Jung emphasized the power of pattern recognition. When you begin to observe consciously, you realize certain types of relationships keep repeating. People who constantly drain your energy, those who take advantage of your kindness, and people who are always happy to receive but never give back. This is when you start to look back at the common patterns of past wounds to avoid repeating them. You realize that not everyone deserves your sensitivity, dedication, and precious inner space. Opening up is a gift, but to whom you give it needs more careful consideration than before. The journey of selecting relationships is not just about cutting away, but also about creating new space for those truly compatible to step in. When you dare to stand firm in your values, dare to say no to what's no longer healthy, new people, mature and respectful, will appear more naturally than you expect. This could be a colleague who listens, a new friend who shares fairly, or even an old family member who begins to see you differently. These new connections do not require you to strain to please, nor demand you hide your darkness. They accept you as you are, in your true essence, both light and very human limitations. Of course, there will be nights of loneliness during this process of filtering. Sometimes you'll feel nostalgia or doubt yourself as you look back at old friendships or relationships. But ask yourself, if you must sacrifice your own peace and values just to maintain a relationship, are you truly happy? Living true to yourself is not selfishness, but the deepest courage you can give your heart. Selective relationships are the next step in the individuation journey. According to Jung, you not only know who to keep, but also how to become the person you most want to walk beside. This is the magic of healthy boundaries, of honesty with your emotions, and of self-respect cultivated over the years. And then you'll see, only by having the courage to leave behind what no longer fits, can your heart truly be ready to receive the good things waiting ahead. 5. Stage 3. When sensitivity becomes strength. As your healing journey enters the third stage, what was once a burden Oversensitivity now gradually transforms into a gentle yet steady source of strength. If in the past, your sensitivity was like a door always wide open, letting in all the pain and insecurity of the world unchecked, now that very sensitivity has become a solid fence that protects you from emotional waves around you. In everyday life, you notice yourself slowly changing. Conversations that once overwhelmed you now become opportunities to listen deeply without getting swept away. Just a glance, a lowered tone, or a slight movement of a hand, and you can detect what is hidden beneath the other's mask, the unspoken truth, concealed sadness, or even signs of manipulation or deceit. This is not a supernatural talent, but the fruit of healing, self-understanding, and maturing through many wounds. The fundamental difference at this stage lies in choice, and that is what defines a truly mature empath. With your innate sensitivity, you could easily use it to influence or even control others' emotions and actions if you wanted. But you don't. True power is not in manipulation, but in the conscious choice not to use it for selfish ends. Jung called this a conscious ethical choice. Those who have walked the entire path of suffering no longer need to win over anyone but themselves. You choose to use your understanding to protect your personal boundaries, to know when to step back, when to say no, or gently withdraw from a game you no longer need to play. Like an artist using a fine ear not to upstage others, but to listen, to truly feel the rhythm of the inner music. You too use your sensitivity as a compass, no longer an open wound, but a sixth sense that keeps you safe amidst unpredictable changes. This transformation is much like the individuation process Jung described, the integration of darkness and light, recognizing that you possess not only kindness and gentleness, but also shadowy corners, strong emotions, the urge to protect, and the right to say enough. When these opposites are accepted and integrated, you stop trying to please others just to avoid pain, and you no longer crave controlling the world around you for a fleeting sense of safety. You'll notice that at this stage, your self-worth no longer depends on being useful to others or being someone who pleases everyone. You walk on your own feet, confidently selecting what suits your soul, your work, and your relationships. You're sensitive enough to notice red flags in communication, strong enough not to rush to rescue when it's unnecessary, and mature enough to withdraw from conversations, friendships, or toxic relationships without guilt. Carl Jung once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. It's precisely when you dare to accept all parts, both darkness and light, both scars and gentleness, that you become truly free." Sensitivity is no longer a chain for others to exploit, but a gentle weapon for self-protection. Those who are insincere, familiar patterns of manipulation, demands, or abuse now become clear, and you no longer drown in the role of rescuer. Imagine yourself as a gardener once scratched by thorns. Over time, those hands don't become calloused, but more refined, able to distinguish fertile from barren soil, which roses to nurture, which thickets to avoid. Each sensitivity now becomes a tool, a sharp intuition, guiding you to live by your true values. The final stage of healing isn't about becoming numb or unmoved by the world. On the contrary, you feel even more, but now know how to keep for yourself what's necessary. You are no longer a victim, no longer swept away by others' emotions, nor a controller. You become a proactive, calm, and free. And then you will see, sensitivity is power, but the greatest strength lies in how you choose to use it, for yourself, for others, and for the world around you. 6. Consequence. collapse and restructuring of old systems. When you no longer stand in the familiar role of the fixer, the mediator, the one carrying emotions for the group, the world around you starts to tremble, not with immediate noise, but like an old structure suddenly losing its main support. Family, friends, work environments. These systems, which once ran smoothly thanks to your quiet sacrifice, now must face an uncomfortable truth. They must adjust themselves or collapse. You may have been the one always putting out fires at home. When there was conflict, you were the peacemaker. When someone was down, you were the listener. When trouble struck, all eyes unconsciously turned to you. You weren't given official authority, but you bore silent responsibility. And then, when you stopped, when you no longer rushed to fix others' mistakes, those systems revealed the cracks that were always there. This collapse can leave you confused. Sometimes you ask yourself if you're being selfish, if you're ruining everything. But try seeing it as a natural phenomenon, like a forest used to a river constantly providing water. When the river changes course, at first the trees wilt, the land cracks, the ecosystem is thrown into chaos. But then, the forest begins to adapt. New kinds of trees spring up. New underground streams form. Life doesn't disappear, it restructures. That's exactly what's happening when you step away from the fixer role. On a personal level, the first consequence is usually not explosive joy, but a very strange stillness. You realize you're no longer pulled into pointless arguments, repetitive negative stories. Your phone buzzes less. Complaints diminish. At first, this quiet may make you uneasy, as you are used to always being needed. But then, from that emptiness, something new begins to appear. Peace. Not a euphoric peace, but the sense that your mind is no longer torn apart daily. You no longer carry emotions that don't belong to you to bed. You no longer analyze every word someone says, guessing if you've disappointed anyone. This peace is quiet, real, and at first may even feel empty. Some people will leave during this stage. Some because they no longer benefit from your sacrifice. Some because they're not used to the new you, a you who knows how to say no, be silent, or withdraw. These separations aren't always loud. Sometimes it's just messages fading out, plans never mentioned again. And strangely, this time, you no longer feel empty as before. Loneliness now takes a new form. It's no longer feeling abandoned in a crowd, but a healthy private space. Like standing alone in a vast field, no noise, no demands, just wind and sky. There, you hear your own voice more clearly. You know when you're tired, when you're happy, what you need, and what you don't. Loneliness now is no longer a punishment, but a choice. Carl Jung called this state conscious participation. Instead of being swept along by the unconscious emotions of the group, you choose to be present consciously. You still love, still care, but you no longer dissolve into the collective emotion. You're like someone standing on the riverbank, watching the water flow, feeling its power, but not jumping in just to prove you can swim. Jung once wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." When you begin to live authentically, to hold on to peace without guilt, a very different kind of maturity appears. You no longer feel the need to explain so much. You no longer need immediate understanding or approval from everyone. You know that not everyone can walk with you through this restructuring stage, and that's okay. Old systems collapse, not because you abandoned anyone, but because they were built on an unsustainable foundation, one-sided sacrifice. And any system relying on someone constantly erasing themselves cannot last. When you withdraw, You're not destroying, you're just no longer propping up a structure that was already warped. Ultimately, true maturity is when you know how to hold on to peace for yourself without guilt, when you know who deserves your openness without feeling heartless. When you dare to leave the old system, you truly step into the spring of your life, no longer carrying others' burdens, but free, light, participating in life with your own awareness and values. That is the mark of someone truly healed, not just for themselves, but as a source of change for the world around them. 7. The final result, the individuated self. At some point, looking back on the road you've traveled, you may be surprised at yourself, not because you've become perfect, but because you are no longer the person who stayed up all night worrying about other people's feelings, the one who thought that love meant endurance, the one who believed that if you weren't there, everything would fall apart. The transformation happened quietly, step by step, from realizing which emotions are yours and which belong to others, from learning to say no while your heart still trembled, from relationships that faded, from old systems that collapsed. And then, after all, you stand here not as someone burdened by the weight of the world, but as a free, steady individual who knows how to love yourself. Carl Jung called this state the individuated self, not a selfish, closed-off ego, but a self that has gone deep enough to understand that you are a whole being. You are no longer torn between the good person and the bad person, between sacrifice and selfishness. You have integrated both light and shadow into your being, and that harmony is what brings real strength. In this state, your sensitivity remains intact. You still feel deeply. You still resonate with others' sadness, with the fragile beauty of life, with subtle things that not everyone sees. But now, your sensitivity no longer sweeps you away. It's like a clear stream where you stand on the bank, seeing its depth and direction, and choose when to step in. You can love without losing yourself. You can be with someone without erasing yourself just to keep the relationship. Your boundaries are now clear, but not harsh. You say no when needed, and it no longer brings guilt or the need to justify yourself. You understand that every no you say is a yes to your peace, to your core values. You no longer need others to agree or to understand immediately. The steadiness within keeps you from being shaken by outside opinions or judgments. There are times you're ready to walk away from a relationship that no longer respects you, away from an environment that makes you shrink to survive, away from an old role that once made you loved but cost you your vitality. And the biggest difference, you no longer fear being left behind. You've stayed with yourself long enough to know that your presence is enough. There is no more panic at being alone, because you no longer abandon yourself. Becoming yourself isn't a return to the soft, good person you once thought was safe. Healing doesn't take you back to the version that always endured, always yielded to be loved. Healing is a journey of growing up, where you become the leader of your own life, the one who makes decisions, who takes responsibility, who dares to live with the consequences of living authentically. Here, you're no longer pulled by collective emotions, by drama, by familiar roles. You participate in life with conscious presence. You choose where to place your heart, who to let into your inner space, and you accept that not everyone will walk with you to the end of the road. That's no longer a loss, but the natural order of maturity. Individuation, according to Jung, is not about becoming isolated from the world, but about entering the world with an integrated self. You no longer run from your darkness, nor are you ruled by it. You know where your anger lies and use it to protect your boundaries. You know where your sadness comes from, and allow it to pass through without drowning you. Light and shadow no longer oppose, but coexist, complementing each other. If you've read this far, perhaps a part of you has already begun to change. Maybe you're not fully in this state yet. Maybe there are still days of doubt, moments when you want to revert to the old version because it feels more familiar. But remember, every time you choose honesty over endurance, every time you set a boundary instead of erasing yourself, you get closer to the individuated self. True healing is not about being pain-free, but about not fearing pain so much that you lose yourself. It is the ability to stand firm in this world with an open heart, but not exposed. It is knowing how to love deeply while still staying rooted. It is living proof that harmony between light and shadow is not just a psychological concept, but a way of life that is entirely attainable. And at the end of this journey, what remains is not a perfect person, but a whole person. Someone who no longer needs permission to be themselves. Someone free enough to love, strong enough to leave, and quiet enough to live true to their deepest values. The journey of a healed empath is not simply about escaping old wounds. It is a process of passing through layers of darkness, from exhaustion under the weight of others' emotions, to facing the inner shadow, to learning to distinguish your own feelings from those around you. In the end, you bravely choose your relationships, steadily say no when necessary, and turn your sensitivity into real strength. Through each stage, you are no longer someone trying to save everyone, but become your individuated version, someone who loves without losing yourself, dares to protect your boundaries, and is strong enough to step away from toxic situations. If you see a part of yourself in this, remember, you are not alone on this path, and you deserve a whole, free, and abundant life. If you found this article helpful, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future insights. The journey of healing and growth always needs companionship. We'll continue to discover our inner strength in the videos to come.